G'day Guardians, it's Matt here, and today I want to shine some light on a weapon that I feel like most players have completely disregarded this season, as well as diving into the god roll that I think that you should be chasing before Witch Queen. This is in fact the Servant Leader. We sometimes see it out in the wild, but most times we don't, and that's probably because most people spent their time at the start of the season writing Reddit threads about how minuscule your chances are at getting a desirable roll to drop. I'm here to tell you that yes, it is an absolute slog to grind a good roll for this weapon, but it will be well worth the investment, and I think it'll be crucial for your arsenal when Witch Queen rolls around. The roll that I'm going to be using in this video today is Surplus Rampage with a reload masterwork and some decent options for the barrel and magazine. I do wholeheartedly recommend this roll. It feels like an absolute dream to use and made me fall in love with scout rifles in a time where scouts aren't really the hot flavor. But like I said, there's a lot of different rolls for this gun, and the chances of getting one to drop and then getting one to drop with your desired perk combination are low. But it's not as bad as people complain. If you are unaware, Servant Leader does have a chance at dropping at the end of a Gambit match, and you can increase the chances by running the Gambit Prosperity mod on your Ghost. I generally find I'm getting a Servant Leader every 3 to 5 Gambit matches, but I know of some cases where others get it more frequently, as well as some having an absolute dreadful drop rate. If you can commit to a Gambit session every so often and sacrifice some brain cells along the way, you'll no doubt be rewarded with this incredible gun for your patience. When it drops, just make sure to pray to the RNG gods that it has some well synergized perks that'll work for you in whatever activity that you want it for. But let's actually talk about the perks, because this thing has quite a few godly rolls that work in PvE, for Gambit, for PvP, and some that just operate as good all-round rolls, which I consider mine to be. While I do recommend my roll, I'm not blind to the idea that there are better rolls for this gun, so don't stress if you aren't getting things like Surplus or Rampage or anything close to that. Just stop before sharding it and double take that it's got some utility, or it might even have some future potential, because it could secretly be a god roll. Servant Leader does have a staggering 12 perks in each column, which has been a key reason for people dismissing it. Quite frankly, that many perks are overwhelming to think about, especially thinking about what perks work best with what, and what activities you take different roles into. In the first column, I find these perks are just to assist in making the gun feel better. You have some staples like Outlaw, Rapid Hit, and Surplus, which are great in every activity, both enhancing reload speed and the latter two offering stability. For PvP, Tunnel Vision or No Distractions can serve you well, both giving assistance in gunfights, which I feel is important given that this weapon does have some kick to it. I really don't see much benefit to things like Surplus or 4 times a charm, purely because the ammo refund isn't really beneficial when you consider how fast the reload is with either of those first 3 perks I mentioned. On the second column, we have perks that enhance the gameplay with Servant Leader, i.e. damage dealers or ability regens, etc. Rampage and Frenzy are great passive damage buffs that don't require any activation besides a kill, and Frenzy provides some extra stats which are welcomed as well. Kill Clip and Multi-Kill Clip are tried and tested damage buffs that work well in PvE and PvP. Everything else here I honestly find a little bit hit and miss, a little bit situational. Osmosis rolls might be worth keeping for my fellow gamers who like making builds. One for All, Thresh, Wellspring, and Adrenaline Junkie are all decent for PvE too. At the end of the day, you want to find 2 perks that synergize perfectly. For Kill Clip, which requires a reload to proc, you'll want to find a perk that complements that, like Outlaw or Rapid Hit, which will let you relive those old Randy throwing knives days. Or something like Surplus and Frenzy, giving this gun an insane amount of stability, handling, and reload buffs. There's a lot of variety here, and they all honestly can hold up, so just double check, triple check your weapon before sharding it, and just think about the synergy between the perks. As for the base stats on Servant Leader, it does fall short to most other scout rifles in terms of what it comes with. The way I view this weapon is that you have to build it up yourself. It's almost like Bungie's way of introducing weapon crafting early. We're given a really basic model here, and we have to pick and choose all the right barrels, mags, perks, masterwork, and mods to really turn this thing into a lethal weapon. It does suck that that is the case, but when you get it right and you get the right version of this weapon, it does surpass its rapid fire counterparts, Contingency Plan and Trustee, and takes the scout rifle cake. You'll notice out of the 3 rapid fire frame scouts, Servant Leader has the most zoom, it has comparable range, stability, and reload speed, but significantly worse handling than Trustee, making it a tad slow to bring out of its holster. This can be combated through perks like Frenzy or Surplus though, but if you have a play around on D2 Gunsmith, you'll see Arrowhead Break and a counterbalance stock mod will give you this 99 recoil, making it an almost perfect straight line recoil pattern. Combinations like Corkscrew Rifling and Tactical Mag are always welcomed for its stability and range buffs to the gun, which I feel like it does actually need from time to time. After testing out other roles of Servant Leader, the other barrels and mags begin to feel a little bit inferior, but have a play around in D2 Gunsmith for yourself, and if you're finding that the handling time is a little bit too slow, then something like Fluted Barrels plus 15 handling might be something that you want on your roll. If you land yourself a surplus roll, it's handy to know how much influence it does actually have over its reload speed, stability, and handling, as seen on the screen there. Basically making Servant Leader feel perfect. If you add those figures onto the base stats that it can roll with intrinsically, you'll see how much of a difference it actually has over the gun. When it comes to PvE, like most primary ammo weapons, you can be rest assured that the Servant Leader will one-shot any red bar if you're hitting crits, and as you start stacking up your Rampage buff or whatever damage dealing perk you might have, you'll even find yourself polishing off mages pretty easily too. But is the Servant Leader worth using in PvE? Is it the best primary ammo gun to bring into this kind of content? The answer to that is, it really depends on the seasonal champion mods available, because this essentially determines the meta, the loadout restrictions for the activity, i.e. can you swap weapons throughout an activity or will you be locked into using the Servant Leader the whole time, and the difficulty of that content. If you're running something like a Battlegrounds or a Strike from the Vanguard playlist, then I, in good conscience, cannot recommend Servant Leader as an ideal option. Sure, it'll definitely get the job done, but in those activities, they're best to be enjoyed, and there are at least 50 better options in the game that clear ads easier and are honestly a bit more fun to use. In very casual content, it's common to see fireteam members run through ads with things like Trinity Ghoul, Witherhoard, swords, breech-loaded grenade launchers, or even just a good-feeling SMG. There's very little room for a Servant Leader or any scout rifle when it comes to fast consumed content like base level strikes. I would say this is a testament to the fact that scout rifles just aren't in a good place for lower end content at the moment though. So this kind of begs the question, where can I use a decently rolled Servant Leader in PvE? If you've got yourself a nice Gilded Conqueror seal or have a handful of Grandmaster clears under your belt, then you probably know that with content of that difficulty, you play a lot slower. You take fights at longer range, and everything needs to be a little bit more calculated. This is where I'd begin my recommendations for getting yourself a nice Servant Leader. Throughout the 4 seasons that we experienced in 2021, the seasonal artifacts gave scout rifles an anti-barrier mod twice in Season of the Chosen and Season of the Splicer, and an unstoppable champion mod in Season of the Hunt, meaning scout rifles were very much a part of the overall 2021 meta when it came to harder content, and I can't see that changing for 2022's Witch Queen plan of seasonal content. But this is me selling to you the idea that scout rifles have their place. What I really want to do is convince you that a good Servant Leader is what you want to have in your arsenal when it comes time for the harder content later in 2022. Now, I'm not naive. I know there are some stellar options for scout rifles when it comes to harder PvE content. Anyone who knows Grandmasters knows that the trusty adept version of Hung Jury is a staple. You've also got the curated role of Nightwatch, which is a fantastic pick, and plenty of options with different affinities to cater for any type of shield that you might face. But here's why Servant Leader takes the crown for me, and this is going to be a little bit of a back and forth comparison and contrast between me, myself, and I, and hopefully I can give you a little bit of an informed opinion. The Adept Hung Jury has one excellent thing going for it. It can use the Adept Big Ones mod, something that Guardians across the plane absolutely value. With the introduction of the 30th anniversary DLC, we saw Bungie give us a new, highly anticipated mod, the Full Auto Retrofit, turning any single shot or semi-automatic gun into a full auto at the expense of its mod slot. This is where I see Servant Leader edge the win over Adept Hung Jury, its convenience of being full auto due to its rapid fire frame, allowing us to free up the mod slot for something else. Mods like Backup Mag, Major Spec, or Rampage Spec, for example, are all options for Servant Leader when diving into PvE content, which I feel can rival Hung Jury pretty nicely. If you're someone who thinks, I'll never run the full auto mod on my Hung Jury, I use Adept Big Ones for life, then you, my friend, have not farmed enough GMs if your trigger finger hasn't fallen off. Jokes aside, I actually found Adept Big Ones to be mostly overrated this season due to relying on fusion rifles and heavies to deal with mages and champions and bosses. Yes, the extra 7.7% extra damage from Adept Big Ones is very convenient since it affects all enemies higher than and including yellow bars, but putting a major spec on your Servant Leader will essentially give you the same thing, but with the added extra of already being full auto. Now, that point there is purely a comfort point. Do you like full auto or do you like Adept Big Ones, essentially? But what's even more crucial here is leaning into the fact that Servant Leader does push past every other scout rifle in the game with its staggering 260 round per minute fire rate, as well as its rapid fire counterparts, of course, as well. If we do some quick maths here comparing it to Hung Jury, Servant Leader deals 45 impact at 260 RPM, and Hung Jury deals 62 impact at 180 RPM, meaning theoretically under perfect conditions, Servant Leader would actually deal 11,700 damage within a minute, and Hung Jury would lag behind just a little bit at 11,160 damage within the minute. Not bad considering we'll have a full auto intrinsically with Servant Leader, giving us more utility from its other two perks. The third point that I would like to make is that Servant Leader is in the kinetic slot, intrinsically dealing more damage than its energy weapon counterparts. But not only that, it means that your loadout becomes less restrictive when GM season rolls around in Witch Queen. By having Servant Leader in the kinetic slot, it allows your special weapon to deal with the shielded enemies, and you will usually be something like a breach loader or a fusion rifle, or whatever the seasonal damage debuff meta might become. So to round off my PvE hot takes, the Servant Leader is convenient when dealing with mods because it's intrinsically full auto. It out damages our beloved Adept Hung Jury, and it's not loadout restricting due to its kinetic slot. So I honestly do recommend you chase a good roll. But when entering game modes like Gambit, boy, does this weapon pop off. Maybe that's because it drops from Gambit, who knows, but this weapon absolutely shreds, and having a good roll is essential for anyone who is invading. It's like Servant Leader was made for Gambit because all the Gambit maps are huge, and with a weapon that shoots insanely accurate, it makes invading that much easier. This is where I really begin to feel my surplus rampage roll, because when I queue up for Gambit with my fire team, my objective is simple. I help clear ads from afar and wait for the invasion portal. Servant Leader is not good at clearing ads. It's not an ad clearing weapon. So if you want to take a similar playstyle, don't feel the need to run in there. Most of the time, I'll hang back at the bank and I'll shoot the enemies from afar. I actually feel like this is where Servant Leader's strengths actually lie. I can stack up my rampage and I can help my team get motes, and by removing myself physically from the area, it means that there's no risk of me collecting any motes, allowing my teammates to get better blockers to send through. Because of this playstyle, I'm not really using my abilities, so that when I do invade, I can feel the full stability effect of surplus to help me mow down the enemy players with ease. Coupling that with Rampage, it makes double kills, triple kills, and even team wipes that much easier. If you're quick enough and you get some kills prior to invading, you'll be able to invade with perks like multi-kill clip, frenzy, or even Rampage if you're using Rampage spec. That they will still be procced, and it'll give you a little bit of an unfair advantage when taking them down, because with those, you'll be dealing extra damage to Guardians. Not to mention, it works just as well as a counter invader weapon too, and if you are coordinated with your fire team, it means that they could get a little bit cheeky and run double special ammo weapons since you'll be dealing with the invaders. On the other side of the coin though, we do have PvP. Right now, scout rifles aren't really in the conversation when we talk about PvP meta, besides those absolute animals that are holding it down in Crucible with Jade Rabbit, but nor are scouts considered the hot weapons everyone should be using. But a good Servant Leader is what I like to consider maybe the dark horse of the meta. If you can live with the fact that our current PvP maps are dreadful for longer range combat, then you'd be able to find some real enjoyment from using Servant Leader. Holding down lanes, communicating team shots with your teammates, and just being a general assist for the team is how you want to play the Servant Leader in PvP. It's not a playmaking weapon, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth using. I've had some absolutely cracked games with it where I've managed to keep Rampage going between kills, but I've also had some games where I just couldn't find my bearings at all. It's definitely for the long range. It really doesn't have a place in the short range, and honestly, it really does struggle in the mid range too. I found using scout rifle targeting, dexterity, and unflinching mods made it feel 100 times better, especially with the combination of surplus, but a good feeling PvP weapon shouldn't have to rely on 4 different sources to make it effective. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just a little bit washed up when it comes to PvP. Who knows? with its natural kick up, you'll always be finding yourself putting the reticle down. So when considering rolls, try aiming for that 100 recoil mark, which is usually pretty doable with counterbalance stock and arrow break head on the barrel. Thankfully, it doesn't roll with rangefinder, and that's because it has the highest base zoom for any scout rifle in the game. This can be a detriment when taking closer range fights, but it is godlike for when you're taking long range ones down a lane. Again, using Servant Leader in PvP really depends on your playstyle, but getting yourself a good roll is definitely worth having if or when the meta changes in Witch Queen. Who knows, 140 hand cannons might go down the toilet and you'll see the rise of a scout rifle meta and we'll be the ones laughing. At the end of the day, Servant Leader is a fantastic weapon with plenty of unique traits to complement it. It does feel like a time and place weapon, but because of that, I do think it's crucial to have yourself a good roll before Witch Queen hits. Surplus Rampage feels like an absolute dream, and it's the perfect mid-ground for all activities that Destiny 2 can offer. But with its hundreds of perk combinations available, I do think now is the perfect time to brave some Gambit and start grinding for the roll that works best for you. So congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. This is actually my first time doing a weapon review, so please let me know in the comments what you thought, whether or not you liked it, hated it. Was there some parts that I waffled on a little bit too long, or was there some crucial information that I might have left out that you thought I should have really mentioned? Any feedback will help improve future weapon review videos. And as always, take it easy, Guardians.